Welcome back. In today's episode, we speak with Luke Tyburski. He is an adventure racer, motivational speaker, and health and wellness coach. He will be sharing the secret to being prepared for anything. You will not believe what this man has done.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. Luke Tyburski lived his dream and became a professional soccer player. But that dream was cut short when injury ended his career. He asked what was next. Luke decided to compete in the infamous Marathon des Sables, running 6 marathons in 7 days and supporting himself throughout. Oh, and by the way, it's run in the Sahara Desert. He cycled 18 hours in a day on his way to learn how to surf. He's run down Mt Everest in the world's highest ultramarathon. He also competed in the Double Brutal Extreme Triathlon that took 35 hours non-stop to complete. If that wasn't enough, in 2015, Luke decided to complete his own triathlon, his own monster, called the Ultimate Triathlon. Here's what it consisted of: a 15-mile swim from Africa to Europe, an 850-mile bike ride up the coast, and then, to top things off, a 366-mile run. 1,250 miles done in 12 days, Morocco to Monaco. Luke's inspiring message is simple. Dream big and get out of your comfort zone so we can all live life a little more each day. Luke, thanks so much for joining us today. I can't wait to share your story with the audience. When you contacted me originally, and I get a lot of requests to get on the show, and I was looking at it and said, okay, wonder what Luke's up to. And man, you just blew me away. I mean, that is an incredible bio, and I really just want to dive in and start from the point of what prompted you to dive right in from the very beginning and do this insane marathon, Sables? Did I pronounce that right?
Marathon des Sables.
Des Sables. Okay. Why was that the first journey, the first race? You hadn't done a 10K prior to that, or that's the only thing you had done. It was a 10K prior to starting to train for that. Is that correct?
I've never done a 10K before.
So you decided to run through the desert on a solo multi-marathon adventure. Why?
First of all, thanks for having me on, mate. And that was a great little intro. But yeah, so why? So 5 years ago, when I did the Marathon des Sables at the start of 2012. So at the end of 2011, I was a broken down, injured soccer player suffering from clinical depression that I was hiding away from the world. I didn't speak about it or to anyone apart from a therapist that I was seeing, trying to help me move forward with life. So when it came a time where I had 3 years of nonstop injuries, I had surgeries and all this, couldn't put a period of time together where I could get fit, go to a professional soccer club. I was living in London at the time, and I couldn't get a contract. I couldn't get a deal, kept breaking down. So the day that I finally decided to hang up the boots, and I was really content with that, and that's why I knew it was the right time, because I had no regrets, and I still don't 5 years on. And I got home, and this is a piece of the puzzle in my life that I'm still trying to figure out, because I went from icing my calf muscle that was torn to remembering a conversation I had with a friend of mine back in Australia, where I'm from, about this race through the desert. Now, all my buddies in Australia were starting to do marathons, and as I said, I'd never even done a 10K before because I was a soccer player. We don't like to run for long periods of time. And for some reason, that conversation came into my head at that time of the day when I was laying on my back on my bedroom floor, icing my calf muscle with a laptop on my stomach. And I looked it up. And it was in 6 months. And I called them up on a whim and just went, do you have any places remaining? And the woman on the end of the phone said, well, if you pay a deposit now, we can give you a spot, because a couple of people pulled it out. And I knew nothing about this race apart from the fact that it was the equivalent of 6 marathons over 7 days through the Sahara Desert, and you carried everything you needed in a backpack for the entire time. So I had not a lot of money, but a little bit of money in my savings, and I literally drained my savings account to pay for this race. And it was in 6 months, and I'd signed up to it, and that's literally how it started.
Interesting. So bring us to the challenge. So you decide you weren't a runner at this point. How did you start to train for this?
I started to run.
But how, obviously, in what, like a sauna to get used to the desert? But no, did you start? Bring us through like where it started. Where you just go out and, hey, I'm going to run 2 miles today and then 3 tomorrow. How do you build up to that in 6 months?
Yeah, so I was working with my physical therapist who'd been treating me over a 3-year period, and a very good friend of mine, still is today. And he's like a physiotherapist who was taking care of me, putting me back together. And so he would treat my body and say, look, you know, we might need to do a little bit more, a little bit less. So we were working together. And I just started to run 3 times a week, and I just built it up. And then it got to a period where I was running 5 times a week, and just slowly built it up, and then built it up a little bit more quicker. And after about a month, I started to run every day with a backpack. So the backpack I was planning to take to the desert, and filled it up with tins of beans and tins of soup wrapped up in like towels and things like that to replicate the weight. And I started to run like that, and I started to play around with the different nutrition that I would need, because you had to carry everything. So I couldn't like just carry endless amounts of nutrition. So I was playing around with a few things, and this is all new to me. So literally my life was a science experiment for someone who knew nothing about running, racing, or adventures through the desert, of just trial and error of thinking what would work. And I got to the biggest week I did was a 100-mile week, and that was pretty mental.
Wow, that's amazing. So you hired a coach, you had someone on your team that was helping you, and then you went out and you tested. Some things worked, some things didn't work, and then just kept changing it until you started to find the right strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that my body really enjoyed the long and steady running, because I wasn't getting any injuries. I wasn't getting any niggles. Like I was doing self-massage after on a foam roller, and I was taking care of myself, and I was getting treatment probably just like an hour treatment every week or so, every 10 days. And, really trying to take care of myself. And, it was working. So most of the days during the race, you've got three days, it's basically 20 to 22 miles. So, and then you have a double marathon day, a marathon day, and then a 10-mile at the end. And the double marathon day, you've got 2 days to complete it. If you finish it early, you get a bit of a rest. So my training ended up, the majority of it being running 20 to 22 miles 3 or 4 times a week. And that was pretty much it, with a little bit of speed work sort of at the end of some of those runs.
Now, did you practice on the beach to simulate the desert condition?
Yeah, I did my first ever complete 42 or 26 miles up and down a beach that was about 3/4 of a mile long. Just went up, back on the soft sand until I did 26 miles. And I was pretty happy to not have to run after that for a couple of days, I must admit.
So you told us about the strategy to get ready for it physically. What about the mentality? What about the psychology? What were the challenges there, and what did you do to prepare yourself?
So growing up in Australia in the late 80s and early 90s, I'm 33 at the moment. So I was exposed to a high level of soccer, because I was quite good from 15, 16, 17. I was quite in the elite academies and things like this. So I had access to some really forward thinking in the terms of in the realm of sports psychology, performance psychology, and this and that. Like, we didn't know it at the time because we're 15-year-old kids. And also things like mindfulness as well. That's when my meditation practice actually started, like unknowingly. So throughout my soccer career, I did a lot of visualization exercises. I did goal setting exercises. I did reflection exercises. All this throughout my whole soccer career. So I just transferred that over to the running. So I did a lot of visualization as, okay, what if I get really badly sunburnt and I can't carry the backpack on my back? So I would visualize what that feels like and what it smells like, and then try and come up with ideas of how I would overcome this. And then do the vice versa. What if I run the whole race and I feel amazing and there's no drama? So I get positive and negative feedback from certain scenarios, but I also concentrate on both the positive and negative scenarios that can happen. So it's not necessarily, well, what if I fall down and break my leg? Now what do I do? Yes, I go through that process, but it's the actual trying to figure out what I need to do to overcome an obstacle and create this little process that I had in my head. So whether or not the negative thing that happened during the race was I fall down, break my leg, or something I didn't even think of, I'd been practicing for months on end of, if something bad happens, I go through this process of how I'm going to fix it. And if something positive happens or I don't feel anything, I'm in a good mood, then I try and stay in that present moment and be like really content and go, wow, this is amazing. Let's take as much in as I can. And that was sort of my mental strength training and my mindful training that I was working on.
You know, there's an interesting nugget that's in there. You know, I think of a fire drill. You know, you never expect a fire, but you practice that drill over and over again. So if it occurs and there is a fire, you immediately know where to go and what to do. And I think in life and in business, so many times the entrepreneurs are focused on, hey, well, okay, what I want. This is what I visualize. This is what I want. And they forget about the times if it doesn't go right, what are they going to do? And then when it shows up, they're like, ooh. And it takes them off track and it derails them for a period of time. So I think that's brilliant.
That's totally right. And I do that in all my big challenges that I've done. And, you know, in business now with everything that I do, because I'm an endurance adventurer, and that's my vehicle to tell my message of dreaming big, living life, and getting out of your comfort zone. And that's my real message. And my vehicle to tell that is my big challenges, and that's what gets people's attention. So whatever it is in life, like whether I'm writing books or doing motivational speaking, you know, I always have a bit of time to visualize, okay, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like, and then go through the scenario sort of exercise of what can happen, what may happen, and what do I do if that does happen, both positive and negative. So it is, you can really put it into any aspect of life.
Yeah, when I'm working with my executives and I'm coaching them, they'll sometimes say, you know, I have no idea what I would do if I'm up on stage giving a presentation and the AV doesn't work. I'm like, well, great, decide now. And they're like, well, What do you mean? I was like, well, figure it out now. Don't wait till it happens. Go through the scenario. So brilliant advice. Thank you for that. When did you know that you were good enough to play professional football?
15 years of age.
And what was the moment? What happened?
So back from age 10, I tried out for the local team, the local area from my town. You know, I grew up in a town with 20,000 people, very sporty town, and you know they always had the district team. And you'd play with the local towns around your area in competitions, and I always wanted to make that team. And sometimes I made it. I was always one of the last ones picked. Sometimes I didn't, and it was brutal back then. 24 guys, 25 guys sitting down after you trained all day, and the coach says, if I read your name out, come and sit behind me. He reads out 20 guys' names. They sit behind him, and they're cheering, laughing. There's 4 guys in front of him, which is I was normally one of them. And he says, better luck next time, guys. See you later. And turns around with his team. And that's like, if that happened now, could you imagine the uproar from the parents?
Yeah, but what a great teaching.
Yeah, exactly. And I would always go up to the coach and go, well, what can I do better? And there's a reason why I tell this story. And I always ask the coach, what could I do better? And he'd normally turn around and go, look, I didn't call your name. I was like, yeah, I know. That's cool. I'm not bothered about that. But how can I become better? Yeah. What can I do? Do I need to work on my left foot passing? Do I need to work on heading the ball? Do I need to work on this and that? And he would give me a few sort of nuggets, and I'd go home, and the ride home in the car, my mum or dad would say, you worked as hard as you could. Well done. And what did the coach say you needed to work on? And I said, I need to work on my left foot passing. Okay, then that's something that you can need to go away and work on it in your own time. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was prepared to do that. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age, I was doing this. I was doing extra work after school, before, after homework, whenever my mum would let me go play outside. And I was doing all this work. And then at the age of 15, there's this big team in my town that used to play in Sydney. So I grew up 3.5 hours outside of Sydney. And there was this team, an under-18 team, that would play in the Sydney competition. And I had a few friends then who were quite good. They were going to try out. And I was like, well, there's no point me trying out. There's no way I can't even make the local under-15 team, let alone the under-18 team that plays in a bigger competition. But my dad said, why don't you just go for fitness? And I thought, oh, that's a good idea, because I was doing all this extra fitness stuff by myself. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to go along. I train with my mates. I meet some cool people. But the coach was a very well-respected coach. He's a Scottish guy, played for Scotland many, many years ago, and he was really into developing youth. And he was very intelligent at just in life, and also getting his coaching philosophy across, and also the game of soccer. So I went and I tried out, and every couple of weeks a cut was made, and I was still there, and I ended up getting picked. And the moment I knew I thought I was good enough to play professional soccer was walking to his car, this coach's car, as a 15-year-old kid, and he was probably 60, in his early 60s at this stage, putting some balls in the back of his car, in the trunk, at the end of training. And I said to him, Judgy, we all called him because his last name was Judge, Judgy, do you think I'll make the regional team this year or the district team? And he said, look, don't worry about the district or the regional team, Luke. You'll make the state team if you keep working hard. Now, the state team is, obviously the whole country comes together for the national championships and you compete for your state. And then the national team is picked from that. So here I am, some kid that has no real self-belief to a degree, being installed with this injection of confidence, which is the confidence I have today. That's where it stems from. I can trace that back to this one moment. And when someone who has the respect of the whole town and has played for his country in this game that I love, when he tells me, you keep working hard, you've got a great chance of, making a team 2 levels above that you've ever made before and getting looked at by national team coaches, I was like, well, he thinks I can do it. Well, I know I can do it. And it was that moment that I thought that I had a chance, if I worked hard, that I may be able to be a professional.
Oh, that's an awesome story. It's funny when we were going back and forth on email and we were talking about today's interview and some of the things we want to get set up. One of the things I always talk about is I want to make sure that the sound quality is at a level so the guest sounds great. That's my job. And you wrote back and you said, I always sound great. And I was like, bam, there's a guy that gets it. He calls it as he sees it. Other people will be like, oh, he's kind of full of it. No, I mean, that is a guy that gets it. If you're good at something, tell the world. So, right on.
Thanks, mate. And how is the sound? How's it going?
Oh, it sounds great. Great. Well, come on. You always sound great.
Well, I know this. I'm just checking if you know the same thing.
See, there you go again. That's awesome. Tell us some of the best advice you've ever received from a mentor or coach or anybody for that matter.
Be true to yourself and kind to others. That's something that was a bit of a teaching in our household growing up. I grew up with a mum and dad and my sister, and a very loving family. We're all very close, even though my mum and dad live in Australia. I live in London, and my sister lives 2 hours outside of London. So, we're spread across the other side of the world, but we're all very close. And it was, be true to yourself, but kind to others. And the phrase that used to get thrown around our household all the time, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And yes, in theory, I still go by that, but it's a bit like, well, everyone is sort of open to their own opinions and everyone can do as they like. Obviously not hurting other people, but you just have to respect other people as well and their thoughts and their beliefs. So that's something that really was installed in us growing up as kids. I think that's a big one, and I've always kept that in mind whenever I've done anything.
And it reminds me, too, that as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're not nice to ourselves. We hold ourselves to such a high standard, and sometimes we kind of beat ourselves up because we feel like we could be doing better. So that just kind of came to mind. Be kind to others and also be kind to you.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, and this could be really interesting, because I'm sure you've got a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this. So in my kitchen growing up, there was a black and white sort of drawing that my mum printed out and stuck on the side of the fridge. And it was a picture of a stork, like a bird, or like a pelican type thing, I think it was. And it was just standing there in some reeds and the water under its feet. And there was these arms coming out of its mouth around the side and like gripping its neck. And it was as a frog, right?
Yes.
And it was like this frog being swallowed, but his arms were out, or his legs, whatever you want to call it. And it was gripping this stork with this pelican's neck. And the caption above it said, "Never give up." So that's been our sort of family motto. And as I've moved along in life and, been involved with more entrepreneurs and talking to people about business and things like this, so there's this whole concept that, people have been very successful. They talk about failing fast. And I get that, and I agree with that to a degree. But if you're constantly failing fast, where does the concept of grit and perseverance come in?
Yeah.
So I challenge people who just every time go fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. I say fail with reflection. So when you fail, have some time to reflect and then see, what you got from that experience. But the other side is when you're starting to fail, and don't just go, well, I'm going to give up now. Just have a little bit more reflection, because you might actually know, I'm going to grind this out. I'm going to persevere a little bit. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to grind this out. And you've got to continue to reflect when things don't go right. And you think, actually, no, like I know why I'm failing. I'm going to try and adjust. No, I know why that didn't work. I'm going to adjust. And you might get to a roadblock and go, actually, that just didn't work. And people might go, well, if you failed fast, then you would have been fine. You wouldn't have been in that mess. But what if that time where you failed and reflected and you get, no, I'm going to keep going, fail and reflect, and you started to grind it out and you started to put a bit of grit into it. Angela Duckworth is an amazing person who talks about grit. Her definition of grit is, to paraphrase, is passion and perseverance over a long period of time. And what if you just kept like pushing and reflecting and trying to find your way? And then that's the money. That was it. Whereas if you failed fast, you may never have gone down the path that you wanted. So I'm not saying fail fast is not something that I do or think about. Is fail, reflect, and if you think, no, I'm not even going to bother about that, then yeah, fail fast at that. But if you think that you actually, no, I can see where I want to go with this, I'm going to keep pushing, fail, reflect, and then use that experience to gain knowledge, to understand why you failed, and then move forward and use that perseverance and grit to get you there.
Yeah, and don't do the same thing twice.
No, of course. Well, if you're doing that, if you're doing the same thing twice, you're not reflecting very well, are you?
No, actually, we have a private Facebook group known as Peak Performance Nation, and on Fridays it's Failure Friday, and it's has a little smiley face. It's a rowing team that's sunk, basically. They're up to their chest in water. The boat sunk, and it's lighthearted, but it's about what didn't work, and then what are the lessons that you learned from it. I just learned this week that I didn't set expectations with a vendor of mine that's had my car for the last 6 months, or one of my cars. And I was like, shame on me to let this thing go 6 months. I should have been all over him a month into it. And the learning for me was, when dealing with others, make sure you set expectations and then hold them to them.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Very good point.
For the last 16 years, I've been driven by the question of why some people achieve amazing results and others don't. The answer? 90% of their success came from their psychology. So if 90% of their success comes down to their psychology, what was the one thing that enabled them to produce the results that others were not? Their ability to execute. Their ability to get things done. Now, we all know how to get things done, but some of us do it better than others. And some of us are not even coming close to tapping our potential. So if you're truly committed to tapping your potential and really becoming a peak performer and getting the results that you need, want, and desire, take your phone and text the word BE Summit. That stands for Business Execution Summit. one word, BE Summit, and text that to 41411. I'm going to send out some additional information on our upcoming event that will truly teach you the science of execution. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Luke Tyburski. Please tune in later this week for part 2.